around for you. We came here for you.
That's right.
I guess the big question is, do you have your Vegas driver's license renewed yet? I mean, now that you're setting up residency here, once again.
14 days at the Residence Inn, baby, if anybody needs to find me, room 327. No, I lived here for 5 years, and I beg my wife to move back every other week, so hopefully it's in the not-too-distant future that I am a Nevada resident once again.
I dig it. Hey, listen, I think people like to hear the behind-the-scenes stuff, right? I mean, this is the UFC machine that puts on fights every single week, but this one feels bigger. What is it different for you guys? I mean, are you guys having to do something different, or is it just you just say, I'm just showing up, it's another paycheck, it's another job assignment?
Oh, it's different. You should see my television format, and the sponsorship inventory is absolutely obnoxious. But no, this sport is better when Conor McGregor is in it. And if Kamaru Usman or another champion is headlining pay-per-view, maybe I do 5 or 7 media hits during the week. I've had over 3 dozen requests because Conor McGregor is headlining. It was like that when Ronda Rousey was here as well. But I'm just excited, man. I'm jumping out of my skin. And as I've told you guys in the past, for me, it's not so much about Conor and Dustin, especially on the eve of a pay-per-view. It's about Alan Amedovski and everybody on down. So I'm in a back-to-back situation. I got 56 athletes in 2 weeks, and doing my best to learn them all as best I can.
Yeah, obviously all the attention's on the main event, despite all the names that you mentioned there. You'll do a great job telling the story, you always do. But I'm curious. We know you're a waging enthusiast as well. You like to put bets down. You certainly won't be betting on it, but when you break it down, because I know you analyze matchups, what things stood out to you? I think everybody's trying to figure out what do we need to be looking at to break this thing down. I'm not asking you, of course, to make a pick, but what aspects of the fight itself stood out to you to start breaking down?
So if you bet on, looks like my mic went out. So if you bet on Dustin Poirier in January, he was, let me get the microphone here, guys. Probably should save the voice a little bit. Thank you. If you bet on Dustin Poirier in January, you were getting plus 250, right? If you bet on Dustin now, you're getting minus 130. Why, right? A lot of that has to do with the result that we had in January. One thing that I've looked a lot at, though, is that was anything but a normalized fight atmosphere. Certainly much has been made of Conor McGregor's children being there, but Fight Island and that W Hotel, you guys can attest, it's just an intoxicating, weird fight atmosphere. You know, we had a quick result in Chandler Hooker, a little bit of an abbreviated warm-up. The next thing you know, Conor and Dustin are in the cage. Now you got 20,000 plus at T-Mobile Arena. I just think it stands to reason that both athletes could benefit from being back in front of a crowd. But big picture for me, I think Dustin's biggest advantage is just the lack of gaps in developmental time over the last 10 years. He has been at this craft without break for 15, 20 years, and that's why he has 11 UFC lightweight wins to his credit. So I think Conor's going to have to fight a great fight, but he did win round 1 in January, and I think a lot of people looking at him at plus money are going to find that to be pretty juicy.
You do a great job of kind of looking at things in big picture scenarios and that sort of thing. Conor McGregor as an athlete, as a star, as a focal point, where do you put him all time in terms of just athletes in general, I think?
Well, I mean, you go sport by sport. I mean, Roger Federer is a favorite of mine, so any top 5 of mine is certainly going to include RF. But Conor's right there. There's no doubt about it. And I think we do lose sight of his ultimate desire to be a mixed martial arts athlete. Like, he's going to cash the check on Sunday, obviously, but he is here to build upon his MMA legacy. And although we can't take away from him the fact that he is the first simultaneous 2-division champ in UFC history, he feels like there's a lot more work to do, you know? The facts are that he has 1 win at 155 pounds in the UFC, and that's a narrative that he wants to change. He's back here for signature wins. He's back here to add to his MMA legacy, and I think we should all appreciate that part of things because he doesn't have to fight.
That's awesome. Last thing for me, like I said, obviously all the attention's on the main event, but I know you research every fight, you're ready. What's one fight that's not getting the love it should be? One that stands out to you that you're like, people should be paying attention to this fight?
Well, I'm curious what Ilia Topuria, the undefeated fighter, can do with this Ryan Hall challenge. It's really as unique a grappling challenge as we have in the UFC right now, and shout out to my podcast partner, Ken Flo, who's going to be in Ryan Hall's corner, so I'm excited to see how Ken Flo fits out that Venom fight kit this weekend. But that fight jumps off the card for me, and I'm certainly not the first to highlight Carlos Condit and Max Griffin in the featured prelim. Max Griffin's current form is very good, but you can say the same about Condit, who really seems to have regained his momentum. So, I mean, Conor's at the top of the bill. It's an embarrassment of riches all the way down. Thank you.
John,
Hey, man.
I don't know if, I know you're a storyline guy and a betting guy, but fellow New Englander Chris Montino plus 525, saw him out at minus 840 last I heard. Have you gotten to meet Chris and hear his story at all?
Yes, I have gotten to meet Chris. I got to listen to some local radio he did back in Fall River, Massachusetts before I came out here. And I was with Jorge Masvidal doing some stuff earlier this week. And Gamebred sort of has this blind philosophy that there shouldn't be anything that constitutes a 10-to-1 favorite in mixed martial arts. That nobody should be minus 1,000 or higher just by nature of a fight, and that anything can and does happen all the time. It's the theater of the unpredictable. All I'll tell you about Moutinho from my interactions with him is that he is totally unfazed by the opponent, by the atmosphere, by the environment of this UFC debut. This is a guy that has put in a decade plus of work. He's traveled to gyms all around the world. Will he be phased when he makes that walk? I don't know. But at least right now, he is mentally sound, and I don't think he's going to be intimidated by the setting. Skill for skill, he would appear to be up against.
You mentioned the Ryan Hall Tapora fight. You called it the Ryan Hall puzzle that he hasn't lost yet in the UFC. I don't think he's really broken into like a sweat in this fight. He's plus 195. Ilya's the favorite right now. I think he's minus 250. Are you surprised at the favorite in the betting odds of that?
I think it's a little bit wider than I would have expected, my man. I will say, though, that odds makers in Las Vegas have long respected undefeated fighters, and maybe too much so. But I think for a lot of people, they see that until Pooty's loss column, and they kind of overrate that. But you're right, Ryan Hall's been perfect in the UFC. I was even going back and watching film of him losing on The Ultimate Fighter just to find some film against Saul Rogers. Like, how do you actually beat this guy? So it's a compelling matchup. You know, Topuria is obviously a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but I think he would be wise to disengage on that front. You know? Thanks.
You're right. You know, we talk about these atmospheres, these big fights, the fighters, and how it might affect them going against them or being in these atmospheres. But for you as a commentator, is it harder depending on, you know, what the fight is, who the fighters are in the atmosphere? Does that affect you at all?
It doesn't necessarily affect me on fight night, but tonight is going to be an absolute bear. I'm going to leave you guys, go back to my hotel room, pound some keys for a little bit. Then we got a 2-hour UFC live on ESPN. So I probably won't get back to my room until 7, 8 tonight when I'll really dig into some of the television formatics. So it's a long day. My Fridays before pay-per-views are about 18 hours. Pay-per-views are a different beast than the fight night, and then a Conor McGregor headline pay-per-view takes it up another notch. But at least at this point, you know, I'm coming up on 10 years with the UFC in October. This is the devil I know, so I'm just trying to sort of lean into that part of it.
Well, congrats on that, sir. And, if you could pick one fighter of all time that you've never commentated their fight, who would you pick?
Nick Diaz, without question. And I got a 209 tattoo to prove it. I did call Nick Diaz Carlos Condit for a movie theater in 3D at UFC 143, but I have never actually called a Nick Diaz fight. So that would be the name. Georges St. Pierre was the answer for a long time, but he did come back and fight Michael Bisping, and thankfully had that opportunity. But hopefully later this year, I might get the chance with Nick, so we'll see.
Good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
John, over here.
Hey, man.
Obviously yesterday the atmosphere was crazy as we kind of saw the old Conor McGregor trash talking, you know, ready to fight at the presser. But over the years, as you've seen Conor gain such a rabid fan base, how has it evolved into having such loyal supporters that whoever's on the other side of the octagon is getting heavily booed?
Yeah, right. Even here in the United States of America, I do think some of the Americans will try to be heard on Saturday night, but best of luck competing with the Irish men and women that have traveled far and wide to be here for Conor McGregor. I really feel like the backdrop for the trash talk this week had everything to do with that $500,000 donation and the fact that, however, impatiently, in Conor's words, Dustin came out and sort of took issue with a little bit of a delay with that payment. That was the foundation for this animosity this week. I'm not saying that Conor was going to be as subdued as he was on Fight Island, but that was the impetus for the back and forth this week. And I've learned to sort of accept and support every athlete in whatever condition, but I do like this version of Conor. You know, not necessarily putting everybody over with praise and just sort of being the fighter and having that chip on his shoulder.
And how exactly does that chip elevate the atmosphere that's going to be in the arena?
Well, I think it elevated the press conference, and people obviously get excited when there's heat on a fight. Certainly for us as commentators, we'd rather have a little bit of heat on a fight than it to be a love fest and these guys hugging before the third round and there's still time on the clock. So I think it has an impact, but man, I mean, the T-Mobile Arena is going to be rabid, dude. I mean, like, I don't know that it really matters. Like, when we were in Jacksonville in April, yeah, we had 3 title fights. It wouldn't have mattered. I just think fans are jonesing to be back in the building, and I think this is this is a special live event that you all are going to be in the building for, and as sought after a UFC ticket in my mind as any in recent memory. So,
Thank you, man.
thank you.
Good, John, over here on your right.
Hey,
First off, do you think Rogers played his last Wimbledon this week?
I hope not, but I think it looks that way. We'll see.
I don't know. I think he got to have at least one more in a good Olympic run, in my opinion. Don't you think?
Let's hope so.
Talking about the fights, for yourself, you know, you're going to do your job, you're going to commentate everything. Someone's going to get their hand raised. Do you now go on to celebrate, since, you know, this kind of event is kind of the Super Bowl weekend for UFC, or do you just, after everything, you're just ready to, you know, hit the hay?
So for this event, I will celebrate. My twin brother's coming out tonight, so I'm very excited about that. So I'll have about 24 hours where I'll do some things recreationally, and then I will return to form because I'm actually out here for the Makhachev-Moises fight next Saturday. So, but like even today, right, there will be a few voiceovers that get done for that July 17th show. We're turning and burning, baby, 41 times a year. So yes, I will decompress for about 24 hours and then begin my Fight Night Fighter cards on Tuesday morning.
How good does it feel to have turned 30 years old recently?
40-fucking-3. Sorry for cussing, Coss, but I'm closer to 50 than 30, which is not ideal. It is what it is, though, right? I mean, it's the one thing we all can't really control. So.
You're making it look good, Josh. Congrats.
Thank you.
John, over here on your right.
Hey, man.
So back in April, you said that of all the fights that you wanted to see happen in 2021, Colby Covington versus Khamzat Chimaev was at the top of that list. But today we found out that Khamzat will face Li Jing Leon in October. What's your reaction to that?
I think it's a good test at this point in time. You know, the Leech has been a perennial welterweight contender type for the last couple of years, and I think it's a good challenge for Khamzat Chimaev. My question for Khamzat is, how long can he sustain in welterweight? I think he's a middleweight in terms of a championship trajectory. I just think he's a big guy, and it's going to be hard for him to consistently make that weight. But I think this is what you want to see. When I was salivating at the possibility of Chimaev fighting Leon Edwards or Colby Covington, ultimately what we all want to see is him ascend and take on challenges that are legitimate. And I think this is a perfect matchup for this stage of his career.
And obviously tomorrow night is a massive fight. In your opinion, where does that rank amongst other high-profile fights in recent memory? And how many pay-per-view buys do you think it does?
God, it's hard for me without any internal metrics. I mean, I certainly think we're going to do 7 figures. You know, I don't know that any live event for me is going to top Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor just because of the preamble and then the brawl that ensued after the fact. You know, that's always the point of comparison for me. But I don't know, man. Recency bias aside, this one feels as big as any as I have called in my career for sure.
Cool. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
John, I was curious, you mentioned the Jacksonville fight way back when, and now we have the fans back, right? So as a commentator, someone that does play-by-play, what have you noticed in contrast during the time that there weren't fans, what you were able to notice about the fight game and nuances that you couldn't recognize?
You know, I know a lot of people appreciated the natural sound you were getting from the corner man when we wouldn't even go into a coach's cam because there were no fans, but the fans are the lifeblood of our sport. Honestly, I don't know how we called fights without a crowd as long as we did, because it really helps us, right? Even just to be able to cap a title fight and then to lay out for 10 seconds and let the crowd do the work for us. So I do not look forward to going back into an environment in which we don't have fans. I know that's going to be my reality next Saturday night, but I'm not overstating it. I mean, for us, it's just a huge enhancer to everything we're doing on Fight Night. I'll never forget walking into that arena in Jacksonville for the first time, and just so thankful to see all of those fine people.
Another one, just always wondered this, always been curious. How much time do you spend and devote to actually learning the pronunciation of everybody's name? Because a lot of the fans out there call you the pronunciation police.
Well, you know, I appreciate that distinction, but it's really just that I think I practice more than most, right? Like if I'm doing a voiceover and I can't pronounce the name, I'll stop the voiceover, I'll say it 50 or 65 times, and then it's committed to memory. My goal is so I can show up on Saturday night with no phonetics, right? Right now I got a couple, like Hu Yat Song, I'm trying not to call him Hugh, right? So Hu Yat Song, I got phonetics right now, but I'm hoping by tomorrow night I won't need the phonetics. But I just think practice makes perfect, baby. I know Allen Iverson doesn't want to hear it, but you gotta practice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, obviously UFC has a lot more stars than Conor, but if he loses, how will that affect trying to get more mainstream fans into get involved?
Well, this might sound like an answer from a guy whose check is cut by the promotion, but the pandemic was really huge for our sport and our fan base. You know, I've just noticed a seismic difference in our fan base because we were live when a lot of sports weren't. So I don't know that mixed martial arts and the UFC has ever been in a better place domestically than we are now. You know, we've supplanted the NHL into that big four with baseball and basketball and football. And I still believe if Conor McGregor loses this fight and falls to 1-3 at 155 pounds, it stands to reason that he does the Diaz trilogy in December, and we're all back here talking about the magnitude of the event. So you certainly can't have a prolonged losing streak and maintain the ultimate relevance, but I think Conor McGregor's star power is such that that he can handle a loss or two more and still be able to be the crossover star that he is. Thanks.
John, way back here, mentioned the birthday and the fact that you've been actually covering this game for a long time. The fight game has evolved, but also the way that the fight game has been covered in the media has evolved too. What do you make about how UFC and MMA is covered now as opposed to when you first started?
It's a good question. You know, I showed up, came here from ESPN in 2011. We didn't even have a pronunciation guy, right? And obviously we had far fewer media members covering this sport. For a guy like me, as I get ready to call these fights, just think about all the wealth of information now that is at my fingertips on the internet that wasn't there when I was getting ready to call my first fight in 2011. So I just think overall the sport is in a much better place, and there are just a lot of qualified credentialed journalists that are now attaching themselves to this sport, not unlike the way I did 10 years ago. So it's great for me, man. The preparation and my process has certainly, it's still arduous, but it's gotten a lot easier because of people like you.
Hey, John, one in the back. To what extent do you think that Conor's performance yesterday was calculated versus emotional, and to what end, if so?
You know, I think he doesn't mind leaning into the emotion, but I do think his general disposition, that part of it was calculated. You know, he was going to go out there with that proverbial chip on his shoulder. He was going to be a dick if he needed to be. So I think that part of it was calculated. But what I love about Conor McGregor is that largely the trash talk is not rehearsed or pre-scripted, right? Like when I'm capping a fight, I don't think about what I'm going to say. And I think Conor very much subscribes to that theory, and that's why by and large, his trash talk has resonated with a lot of people because it's organic and it's not pre-thought. So, you know, I know some suggested maybe it wasn't his banner performance. I was sitting in my room, I was wildly entertained the whole time. So, I don't know, man, I'm excited.
Well, right, but that's sort of the interesting idea about the sort of functionality of it, right? Like, do you think it was an attempt to get into Dustin's head? Because, like, if so, right, like, once you lose that intimidation factor, once, you know, someone admits and tells you that trash talk got in their head and then they knock you out, like, how do you gain that back? Is that even possible?
I do think that that visual and that reality of what happened in January is fresh in Conor McGregor's mind, but I think he's talking the way he is and the bravado is there. He's doing that for himself. I think if he understands Dustin Poirier the way we all do, he acutely knows that you're not going to be able to occupy headspace with Dustin the way you were in 2014. He's just too mentally tough. He doesn't care about the peripheral stuff that he cared about even 2 or 3 fights ago. You know, before Dustin fought Dan Hooker, he was liking my shit on Instagram. He's nowhere to be found now, you know? So his mentality has changed to a point where I think Dustin's mind is impenetrable, and I don't know. We'll talk to both guys after the fight, but I think that's where I'm at right now.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.